So before we start this, if you need a ballot and have not turned one in yet, I got copies.
Is our written one okay?
We hand wrote one.
Yeah, I got them.
You
I
saw
got
them.
them.
Okay.
It's
I
good.
wrote
It's
my
all
name at the
legal.
bottom. Okay.
You're good, you're good.
Yep.
Isn't it sort of like a Putin election?
Well, no.
Oh.
Well,
You know.
there's only one party. Who are you going to vote for?
So, I come with my little traveling show to tell you a little bit about my background. I did about 20 years teaching history and English. I also do some writing, and so history and storytelling are really important to me. And to that end, what I found in my current job, which is being a historic interpreter at a living history village, which covers the span of 1845 fur trade in Minnesota to 1889, sort of the tail end of the Victorian era. It is really important to be able to convey information in a specific way. And so what I'm going to be talking to you about today is teaching baseball in schools. And over quite a lot of years, I've found that the best way to do that is through physical hand-on things and storytelling, okay? So what I'm going to try and do is to talk to you a little bit about the levels that I've interacted with and how I've approached it. And if you have ideas or things, please go ahead and share those as well.
So we can interrupt at any moment of this conversation?
That's right.
All right.
I may give you a really off-the-wall answer because in the last 4 days, I've been in 5 states and attended a funeral,
Oh my God.
and I'm still working out of the same clothing bag that I left with on Tuesday. Yeah, and I've done 2 speech meets as well. So it's a fun. All right, so I have taught 1860 baseball to 2nd graders in a library, in a classroom, okay? I've also taught as an activity, multi-ages, but it's all elementary. So it was like from about 2nd grade to 5th or 6th grade. And I did that with Corky Gaskell. I've also taught 1860 baseball to YMCA groups who are sort of just bust in as part of a Civil War event. And I've also taught 1860 baseball to junior and senior students in high schools. And it's a class called Sports and Culture. And it's part of the social studies curriculum in that particular school. And they actually give me 2 days. And they've got it's like a 90 or 100-minute class. It's Waconia. So the first day I go in and I bring this huge bag, and I've got like 8 or 10 bats, and I bring a number of different balls. I bring uniforms. I come dressed in uniform. I lay stuff out that in some way, shape, or form sort of represents baseball from 1860 to about the 1930s. And one of the things that I try to make sure that they really understand is that in a variety of ways, baseball has changed consistently. And I always try to use some of the factoids that I've learned from Eric. And, you know, and then I tell them these could be wrong,
Oh.
but they're the guy on the East Coast, so just
Of
accept
course.
it as being correct. And then the second day, we go out onto a field, and I've got the field laid out. I come early, lay out the field, and whether it's one large class, usually 25, 28, something like that, to two classes, and then I'll basically spend the whole day there because we do it multiple times. We play as much of a game as we can. And what I have found myself doing, besides sharing all of these reproductions and artifacts and so forth, I tell stories, okay? And that's the one consistent that I found throughout the ages that is really, really important, telling stories. And the teachers in the room will know what this is. It's basically Bloom's taxonomy. And, oh, yeah.
Pain.
You know, but second graders, third graders, they love remembering memory type things, okay? And I will teach them words. So we'll go through 19th century baseball terminology, and that has changed as we've learned more. And I will have them spell it, and I will have them say it out loud, and I'll use it in sentences. And I always carry some form of a projector presentation so that they can see it as well. Kids are, I think Pops can back this up, that today's kids learn best when you present them in a multiple set of learning types, okay? Hearing it, seeing it, touching it.
Differentiated
Experience.
instruction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I've been out of the teaching world long enough that I've learned the fancy, or forgotten the fancy language, but you know what I'm saying. Second graders, third graders, they're really kind of too young to be able to actually play a game, you know? They don't really know where the positions are. The ball comes at them, they're more likely to just stand like this or go like that. And so, second or
You
third.
could dumb it down to kickball, the
Yeah,
same kind of layout.
that I
Easy
know.
catch and
Yep.
move it.
Yep. But a lot of times I've only got like 40, 50
Small,
minutes,
yeah.
and it's in a classroom. So what I'll do is I'll have them play catch. I always bring a half dozen or maybe even a dozen balls, and they're game used and they're softer, so that, you know, if something goes awry, they're not really gonna get hurt, okay? Yeah, there you go. And we'll play catch, barehanded catch. So they're getting the experience of using that ball. They're getting that tactile thing going. And then I may lay out 4 bases. In a classroom, it's really small. So I may have them run all 4 bases. I may put the smallest bat I've got in their hands, and I will teach them to stand on the line, and they'll swing at nothing and take off and run and leg it, and I'll have the kids yell, leg it, you know. And so that's their experience. On a sort of an upper elementary level, you're starting to get some differences in size and abilities, and so that's where you can do a little bit more. Once you get into that junior high area, that's where you can start teaching them some of the differences. From second grade to fifth, sixth, seventh grade, they can get into compare and contrast, distinctions of differences. So I'll say, I'm standing on a line. Where's the batter's box? And so then we have a little discussion about what happened with the batter's box. And I'll say the pitcher is there. He's just behind the line. A little bit later, I don't hit him with a lot of dates. A little bit later, there'll be an actual box that they have to stand in the middle of, and they can kind of roam in there. And the kids really like that because that's weird, okay? Now, if you can do weird, they really like weird, okay? Something that isn't terribly odd, but it's different from what they know. That becomes weird, all right? By the time you get up to that 10th grade, then there's more of that critical thinking skill that kicks in, and they're doing why did this happen, or why don't you do this? And that's when it becomes more interesting. I really have to resist the urge to say, let's go out on the playground, okay? So when you get to that sort of level, then you're looking at teaching in sort of a different way. So lower elementary, I use lots of pictures. I have probably 20 of these foam boards or standing presentation boards, just kind of filled with pictures. And part of what I'll do is to just have the kids, I'll spread these around the room, and the kids go and look at different types of bats or different types of gloves or different ways that the batter's box was dealt with over time. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about some of those things. Telling stories, just how to make a play, and telling a story about the fact that in our game, 1860, the catcher stands 6-8 feet behind. And the kids then ask, why did he do that? That's that compare and contrast kicking in. Because everybody has watched at least one ball game in their life, and they've seen the guy, up like this, and you almost have to cringe wondering why he doesn't get his head taken off a dozen times a game. And so you tell stories about how and why the catcher is back here. And then you tell them a story about why that catcher started to move forward. And then you ask them the question, if somebody is running, why is it easier for them to steal back when the catcher is back here than when the catcher is up here, okay? And to us, obviously, that is a complete no-brainer. To second, third, fourth, and even some fifth graders, that's like, whoa, dude, we're talking mind-blowing here, okay? And it's in part because they've never seen that. they don't know why it is. It makes no sense to them. I'll try and show 1860 baseballs and 1860 bats. Like I said, sometimes I'll carry into the classroom a dozen bats, a dozen balls, and just laying them out in sort of a chronological order. Even when you get into high school, the kids don't even get to their seats for 5 minutes because they walk in the door and they make this beeline right to this line of bats. First of all, they're all wood. And then they have to try them out. And even the lightest ones, the ones you and I would swing with one hand, are going, oh, damn, this is hard, you know? And yet that, there'll be questions later on, because even that, just that little prep work has made an impression on them. And they're remembering that muscle feel and so forth. And then you show them the balls. And I love a little story. I'll talk about proto ball games before I actually get to 1860 rules. And I'll talk about old cat, and I'll talk about trap and ball. And then I'll talk about Massachusetts rules. And I always make sure I've got a really, really soft ball in my hand as I'm talking about Massachusetts rules. Because you know what I'll do then?
Pick a kid off.
Boom! And they go, oh no! And all the rest, and I'll pick the one that looks like the best athlete. Okay? Because A, I know it's not going to hurt him. And B, it's going to instantly flare conversation. Okay? And so I will hit the kid. The neck, of course. And yeah, you know, I'm not you, Eric. I micromanage. and so they're seeing the comparison and the contrast. It's again that tactile thing. And they're getting stories. They're getting images. The more learning modes that you can put together, the better. Okay? Now, why did I offer this presentation to Dustin initially, and then when he had someone drop out, he asked if I would do it? It's because of what she said in the last presentation, educational content. I've actually had kids at Jordan a couple, 3 years later, after they've done the school presentation, they'll recognize me. I guess I'm not a wallflower or something. And they'll, are you playing 1860 baseball? Yeah? You remember me? No, but I always say yes. Always say yes. You need an extra player?
Oh, no.
Sure. Where do you fit in best?
Right
Not in Jordan.
I'll send them out in the field. They can become one of my players, and especially if we need an extra guy. The multimodal learning has an impact. I have kids in a school in St. Paul that the teacher that I work with has told me that 3, 4, 5 years later, the kids will come back and say, I remember that. You know? The education. And we're putting our game into the mainstream. So every one of your teams should have someone who feels confident enough to try and do this. Okay? Because Minnesota has 14 teams. I don't know how many teams in Wisconsin have. Illinois has, I'm thinking we could double that by getting into the schools and getting those kids excited, because I always give them a schedule. I always give them the website. I give them my Gmail address.
Oh,
Make
is
those.
that a dangerous thing to do?
No, it hasn't been.
Because you're theoretically, you're not doing an interactive communications thing with them.
Well, by the time they get the email, they've already done interactive.
Okay.
Okay? So, hands-on, 2 lines, play catch, hold and play, let them hold balls, bats, other artifacts. Every conference I go to, I try and pick up either a couple reproductions or something authentic that might be on the silent auction last year. I got an 1880s catcher's chest protector, okay? That will come in a little bit, and if you use a little bit later. I will always have them play in the classroom. Teachers cringe, but I still have them play trap and ball, at least 1 or 2 hits. Ball is soft, I sell them, hit them over into that corner, and it's not really gonna break anything, all right? So, multi-age, this gets to be a little bit of a more difficult type of thing, for the simple fact that you're gonna have to think in terms of how to give the same experience to kids with really maybe in different ability levels, agility levels, etc. So I'll do all of the activities for a lower elementary. I'll do some warm-up throwing, but instead of having the kids this far apart, they'll maybe be, it's outside, and they maybe will be from here over to the display wall, okay? And most of it will still be underhand. The older ones will go overhand, okay?
Until they get the feel of the ball, Doug. I've even done it where I let them bounce it to them first.
Yeah.
Just to get used to hitting the ball,
Yep.
hitting their hands so they know
Yep.
what it feels.
Yep, good idea. I will give them basic rules instruction, all right? The 1 foot on the line. The pitcher is behind the line. You don't have to hit or strike at anything until you find your pitch. You can't overrun first base. Do not slide into home, okay? In Waconia, I literally had a guy do that. I mean, he was gonna be safe by 25 feet, but he was quarterback, center fielder, I don't know what he was. And he decided to come in like that. Patel just turned right back on home plate, So you do have to worry or wonder. But so I give them basic rules. Because remember, these are still, this tall. All right. If you're outside, set up the bases, hit, run, and field. Don't really worry about scoring. All right. If you're outside, let the older students play an inning or two, depending on the time they have, and the younger ones become your sideline interpreters. I'll act as umpire. Okay, you just got to hit. What should you yell? Leg it, leg it, leg it, leg it. Should he stop at first base or overrun it? He has to stop, he has to stop. Okay? So you're involving everybody, but again, it's everybody in a different way. School groups and activities. A larger framework of historic activities. either in the classroom, this is where the history teacher in me kicks in. I always bring a ton of handouts. I'm actually shorting you guys, but I figure you know a lot of this stuff. I talk about events. I talk about culture. There has been at least in some minds the question of whether the Civil War sort of halted the progress of baseball or it expanded, and so I will set that question out and talk to them a little bit about the Civil War. I'll show them that picture of the ball game going on in the background as they're drilling in the foreground, and what do you think? That's all I have to do. What do you think? And they'll riff on it for 20 minutes if I let them. Since I come in period clothing, I feel totally comfortable doing this because I will spend 14 hours over the course of a weekend in 1880 period correct clothing. I understand probably many of you wouldn't, but I do. And so I have had questions. I'll be walking around like this, and I had one young lady, I'm standing right here, and she says, "Why don't you have a zipper on your pants?"
Did you tell her because you had the pens on?
You know, she was cute, so I thought it depends on what I, you know, yeah.
Might not know what the pens are.
But the thing was, she was observing the clothes, and that gave me a time to talk about by the 1880s, you've got a crude zipper, but in 1860 you don't, and so I'm showing her the pleats. Yeah, there we go. Come on. Yeah, we're not getting into Stormy Daniels land here. And then I'd turn around and I'd show them the different construction on the back, and we talk about the shirts and how a pattern from 1860 is different from a pattern today, and the material is all natural, and how that changes the way you hydrate and so forth. And so all of this stuff is just because I came in uniform, okay? And so I may talk to them. I may show them. I've shown the Conan O'Brien, Beth Page
Right,
thing,
yeah.
you know.
Point that out.
But my point for doing it is, everybody says they're a farmer.
Yeah.
Is that who played?
No.
Okay? And so that then allows me to get into talking about industrialization and the reason why guys went out to New Jersey to get away from the smog and all the other stuff, and it was also a chance to meet the ladies and things like that, you know.
Let me just say one thing about that. He asked most of us what we did for a living. He came to me, and I said to him, "Well, I sell liniments and oils and I handle women." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I can stiffen your rope, harden your wood, or polish your knob." And he cut that out of it.
Oh, I don't know why.
You believe that?
You know, he's just a phony.
Well, you're sitting next to him, Kyle.
Yeah, but it goes to your point. They weren't all farmers. Many were, but the Knickerbockers had bankers, right?
Yep.
So,
And so what that allows me to do is to talk about the various strata, and it's a social studies class. A lot of times I'm being brought in by a social studies teacher. So, you know, it all works. And talk about baseball as a reason to exercise, get fresh air, get out of town and the cities. I really, really look forward to working with the upper class. because that goes down on that level of Bloom's taxonomy where they're really able to sort of put it all together and do some creative thinking with it and see the larger picture.
Well, and your inquiries get more challenging and more.
You bet. You
in-depth.
bet. Exactly. And so, like I said, I do a 2-day experience, sports and culture, sports and history, and I will talk to them about all of the things I've talked about. The first time I did it, I did a power presentation that alone, without any questions, would have taken up more of the time. And I decided that it's better to go with this storytelling route, make the links, start with the proto ball, go forward, and end up, I always tell them the story of Abner Doubleday. And I tell it to them this way.
There's a story?
There is. Would you like to hear it? I always preface it with, would you like to hear it? So far, I've never had anybody say no. I've had some recently go, who's Abner Doubleday? And I don't purport this to be the true facts, the whole facts, unslanted facts, or anything else. This is a story, okay? I tell them that Abner Doubleday was in general in the Civil War. His friends, as he is getting older, starts to feel as if he has not gotten his proper due in the history books. He's being sort of short shrift. And so it's also taking place at a time where America is desperately trying to form its own identity and create for themselves an independent nation perspective. And so they form a commission. They form several commissions. And they start looking. And they start sending out advertisements across the country. And they're talking to one another. And they're trying to get people involved and finding out information that will A, lead to Doubleday getting his proper due, and B, making America the American game. And so they send out this nationwide search. And lo and behold, an old man in Kansas City sees the newspaper with the advertisement asking for information. You notice what you're doing now? Eric's leaning forward. You're leaning forward. Everybody is quiet. You say, Abner Gray writes a letter purporting to have the Holy Grail, the ball that was used in the very first game, the one in which Abner Doubleday gets down on the ground and lays out and assigns the positions and says, here are the rules, boys. And it's in Cooperstown, New York. And he is right there. In fact, he knew in that moment this was a history-changing event. I don't mind emphasizing unnecessarily to make a point. And then from the bag I carry, I pull out the Abner Doubleday ball statue that I bought at the Hall of Fame. And I say, this is a reproduction of the ball that was first used And it's been in Abner Graves' trunk all these years. They hail it as a victory. America has its game. Long pause. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's only one small problem with this.
That's where he died.
That's where he died.
Yeah.
Number one, records have shown that Abner Doubleday wasn't in Cooperstown that summer. Number two, Abner Doubleday never spoke or wrote about that momentous occasion in his entire lifetime.
There's no evidence that he even attended a baseball game. That's right.
There is no evidence that anything that Abner Graves said had any relation to reality. Which actually works because he died in a mental institution from having killed his wife. And the kids all go, "Oh man!" The story time. Okay? You don't have to go heavy on the dates and places and moments and, for us, that's fine. For them, they want to hear the story. And as long as you're telling them basic accuracies, you got it. They can go up onto Google and look up the dates, or onto Eric's website, which I always promote at these things, and find out the exact locations and the development, and I will show them your videos from the Hall of Fame. Yeah, and I always credit you. I may overplay my hand a little bit, but I call him my friend.
Okay. Are you choking as you say his name?
Yeah.
I'm sure you say some jackass New Yorker.
Now, sometimes I will tell them the story about the more people in the apartment.
Okay.
I hand out rule sheets for 1860, and we discuss the rules. And you know what? Overnight, those kids, they will come the next day onto the field, and I know that they have absolutely pored over those rule sets, because some of those kids know the rules as well as I do, and maybe even a little better. Okay? They've been drawn in. They've seen the weird, they've heard the stories, and all of a sudden they say, this is something important to me. Day two, then, we go out onto the field, and again, it's like a 90 or 100-minute class. So we will get 6 or 7 innings in. We have to divide up teams, and some of them want to run the bases first, and so we let them do that, and then the teacher will pitch. Sometimes I will catch if we're a little short on people, but then once we let them go, man, they just take off. And some of the girls are into it with more intensity than some of the jock guys. Because I also tell them that girls started playing baseball. And I tell them the story, again, the story, about not being allowed to play in public. They had to be behind a wall at Vassar, I think it was. And because it was unseemly to, these girls love to sweat, man. They will go all out, all right? So that's day two. And were gonna do it last year, and there was some technical glitches, that the place where I work at didn't know about. The overall, organization had rolled out a new website, and it cut, registrations off for summer camps 2 weeks in advance. And we have always worked on the idea that you come in the day before, we'll take your kid. And we didn't realize that we couldn't figure out where we weren't getting this last minute surge. And so we're doing it again. This is the syllabus for what I have proposed, and this is what we will be doing. And to allow me some time to do the storytelling and give us time to sort of show this progression over time, I've come up with a deal where it's 3 days long. The first day, we will do 1860 and some proto ball, okay? And Corky will come in and teach them to make a ball. The second day, we will advance the rules a little bit, and we'll do something from the 1870s. And I will get a bunch of leather workman's gloves, and they'll cut the fingers out, and that will be their glove, okay? And the third, we will go a little bit more into the future, show them yet a third set of rules. I'm thinking of having them do one of the years where each position had its own uniform.
That would be 82.
82. And since I can't outfit all of these kids, I got different hats
Right.
from Norma
Right.
last year. And so I've got a hat for each kid, and I will assign position according to the hat.
On my website,
That's
I
it.
list everything.
Yep.
You know, okay.
Yep.
For both American and national,
Yep.
so you can.
Yep.
And there was a time they just did socks, right?
No, that year was, yeah.
Yeah.
It was the socks. You could tell by the socks what team you were on. It was the shirts and the hats that showed you what position you
Okay.
played. Yeah.
But since we're trying to cut costs and
Yeah,
it's
of
only
course.
3 days, it's hats for us, okay? And then in the afternoon, we're gonna learn 2 vaudeville routines. Who's on first? And Casey at the back. And then I'll send them off with the admission that we do accept people who know the game if you want to come and play for us. Again, it's all about that idea of getting the word out, letting kids know, because kids are there's the ones that's gonna check stuff out on YouTube. They're the ones that are going to go home and say, I saw this. Let's go see this.
What
And-
age group, Doug?
This would be junior, well, no, this would be basically from about 11 to 16. So,
I think I joined
No, I ran a vintage baseball, or did a history of baseball group at my school, and when I did it, I called a lot of our vendors and talked to them about donating things.
Mhm.
Like Brian from Smacker donated 2 bats.
Okay.
I think Eric donated
Mhm.
all the balls
Yep.
for our event. I got, who was it? Oh, the guy from Vintage Baseball Factory donated the hats at a significant decrease in cost, like $5 a piece.
okay, yeah.
Just if you were looking for some ways of like bats and balls, you might be able to get some donations.
What they're hoping to do, if this actually works out and takes off, which there should be no reason now that we've got the registration glitch out of the way. If we do it as an ongoing thing, we can develop it more.
Absolutely. It looks
know?
great.
So here's the deal. I basically made the point of always trying to include the kid in some way. Hands-on, tactily, audibly, storytelling, visually, whatever way, okay? I have always tried to give students at every age at least one hands-on experience of some kind, whether it's the little tossing the ball back and forth or picking up the bats, or just I'll lay the materials out and they can just come up and try it on. I've got a couple old wool uniforms from the 30s that they can mess with. I try and tell stories. As a writer, former history teacher, as well as a historic interpreter, I love to create enthusiasm. I love to create excitement. I love to use that sense of drama. And, you know, some of the things that happen in baseball cannot be scripted. They're just too beautiful, too weird, too awesome. You look at modern players even. Some of the guys, they're running full tilt, top speed, and they know exactly where they are. One hand out in front of them. I've seen a guy take 4 steps up the side of the wall, jump, and it's in his glove. You cannot make up a story like that. Our game is filled with as many of those stories. Part of my job is to simply make those stories real to the kids. I try to come in dressed in clothing, period uniform, umpires, or civilian clothing, and I solicit questions. So with all of 0 minutes left.
Yeah, that would be normal for teachers. Thank you for
Do you
following
have
that.
any questions?
Great job, Doug.
Thank you.
Yeah.